Welcome to the Mount Pleasant Podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people of Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor and the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant Podcast. Mount Pleasant is a terrific place to live. It's something we all know, and if you talk to people who live in Mount Pleasant, if you ask them, hey, what are the top 5 things about Mount Pleasant? Somewhere in that list, I think most people would list restaurants. So many great places to eat in Mount Pleasant. And that's what we're talking about today on the Mount Pleasant Podcast, because there's a campaign going on right now in the town of Mount Pleasant where you want to get out and eat. And that's what we're going to talk about with our guest. She is the director of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce. Rebecca Imholz is with us. Rebecca, why? The program that you have going on, second year for it, Dine Where You Live campaign, what was the motivation? Why did you guys come up and said, hey, let's do this campaign?
Well, thank you, Brian, so much for having me and really the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce on your podcast today. I guess my first answer to the question of why focus on restaurants in Mount Pleasant in terms of a chamber's role, it's that why not? Because they're such an important part of our community here east of the Cooper in terms of the folks they employ, what they bring to our community, the opportunity to go out and enjoy food and drink with family and friends. So such an integral part of our community that it's hard to believe now, isn't it? That it's been since March 2020 when the whole COVID pandemic hit. And during that, they really struggled. I mean, that's no surprise to anybody that our food and beverage industry, our hospitality industry struggled during that time frame. So honestly, when we came back from that and we started doing some more in person, I went to one of the restaurants and to some of the local businesses locally and just said, how's it going for you now that we're back? And they said, we need people to come in our doors. So that formulated a bigger campaign called Biz Where You Live in Mount Pleasant that we just finished a component of that, Shop Where You Live, for the second year in a row, encouraging people to go to retail and businesses and shop. And then we parlay that into Dine Where You Live for the second year in a row, again, encouraging people to go and dine out and support our food and beverage establishment. So we're really excited to be partnering with the town of Mount Pleasant on this campaign again.
Well, and sadly, you had to bring up the C word, the COVID thing, but it's something that we've all dealt with. So as someone who's actually talked to restaurateurs and people there, is there a sense that, yes, they have finally been able to rebound from COVID, or is there still some leftoverness that's still affecting business?
Well, I think for most of them, they have, the new word, and during the beginnings of COVID was pivot. We all learned to pivot. Right. So our restaurant industry did the same thing. They started focusing more on the attractiveness of getting your food and leaving with it to go back and spend time with your family and your friends. So they did a lot of that. And then as people started walking back in the door, I've noticed some have decided not to continue having necessarily in dining. They focused more on the takeout part of their business. But those that want to continue having folks dine in an establishment, and let's face it, when it's at the end of the day, you can meet up with some friends, you're out of your personal element, you're home. It lends itself to more fun, creative conversations when you're someplace else with a group of people. As people, we still need people, right? We don't want to be isolated. We certainly are learning that too from the after effects of the pandemic. So the restaurants that I would say the folks are coming back, they're coming back to dine. I think one of their challenges, though, honestly, is, and we've all heard that in the news, is workforce challenges, keeping their levels staffed. And so that's something actually the Mount Pleasant Chamber looked at last year with a program on diversity, equity, inclusion, but taking a little different take on it and looking at hiring people who think differently. have intellectual abilities, as we like to refer to them, where they might have autism or Down syndrome. They're highly employable in the food and beverage industry. And we did a half-day program in partnership with the town of Mount Pleasant, the Charleston County Disabilities Board, and businesses here in Mount Pleasant who have successfully employed people with intellectual disabilities. So we sort of realized that was coming, that there would be some workforce challenges. So what we try to do as a chamber is think outside the box. What can we do to help address this? And so those are some ongoing things that are happening. But honestly, for the most part, I see the restaurants in terms of the diners wanting to come back. They're wanting to come back.
Podcasting has exploded in popularity, especially local podcasts. As of 2022, 62% of Americans have listened to a podcast. 38% have listened in the last month. 26% in the last week. The podcasting audience is booming with no signs of slowing down. Call the podcast hotline to be featured on these podcasts or to receive information about podcast marketing. Call 843-530-0403 or visit carolinapodcasts.com.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Good news there. We're talking with somebody who tries to stay ahead of the curve. That's what the Mount Pleasant Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce is all about. Rebecca Imholz is joining us today on Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm Brian Cleary. So, Rebecca, this is the second annual Dine Where You Live campaign. So, obviously, the first year campaign was successful and made you want to come back and do it again.
Absolutely. I mean, the feedback we got was absolutely tremendous in terms of how much the restaurant community appreciated it. We're not asking them for anything. I think that's what makes us so unique in this campaign. I'm not going, and you can be a part of this, sign on the dotted line and hand me some money in exchange and you can be a part of this campaign. Nope. All along, we've been out there signing up the businesses at no cost, because we know that it's been an interesting last 3 years, that we can support them as a chamber. We can push them out in social media. If they're chamber members, we do a little more for them, of course, as would be expected, in terms of we do have their photos on social media. But for the most part, we've not asked for anything. We just ask that they allow us to put their name out there. The town has helped us with the PR efforts, and what the chamber is doing is we're buying any sort of giveaways that come out as a result, because it's one thing to have the restaurants out there with their names, but we got to get people to come in the door and be a part of the campaign. So what we're doing is we're offering to people that patronize, hey, post out there on social media. Lots of people do anyway, that they're eating out tonight. Absolutely. And where they're eating. And if this is a restaurant that is participating, then their name goes into a weekly drawing. If they win that week, we're going to give them, the winner, a $50 gift card from the restaurant that they patronized. And the restaurant's not paying for that. The chamber's paying for that. So I'm really proud of the fact that this is a way for the chamber to show our appreciation for our community that has so supported us, not only as a chamber, but in the past, we were the Mount Pleasant Business Association for folks that have lived here longer than 6 years or so. And now we're a chamber. So we really appreciate our community support and our business support. So that's one way we were able to do it.
So anybody who's been on social media, somewhere in your feed, you've got, like you said, people love to post photos when they're out at restaurants. Most, though, what I see, Rebecca, is a picture of the food. Here's what I got on my plate. So if I want to participate in the Dine Where You Live, does it need to be a picture of me at the restaurant, or could it be a picture of the food?
It could be whatever you want. If it's the food that's captured your attention and you want to share it with folks, put the food. Or you can put yourself. You can also just put, stand outside the restaurant and say that you were there eating, and send it on in, because we love to get those entries.
And so to get my entry through, is it a hashtag? Is it a tag? How are you going to know that I'm entering in the Dine Where You Live campaign?
So all you need to do is, I'm pulling out my trusty flyer here to make sure I don't miss anything, is check in your social media, take a photo and post it on Instagram. Make sure that you put the location and hashtag tag at Experience MP or at MTP Chamber. Perfect. And if you go to our Facebook, it's out there. And if you just plug in Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, Facebook, what's happening right now. Our social media person does a great job of keeping it out there all the time.
And you mentioned a little bit ago about the town helping out with the publicity for this to spread the word. Between the town of Mount Pleasant, the government aspect, and the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, what's that relationship like?
It's a great relationship. We are very blessed to have them as partners. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, they partnered with us to look at the diversity, equity, inclusion conversation, to address workforce challenges. They're a great resource for me. One of the areas that we're looking at as a chamber this year is transportation, what transportation options are out there. The town is just, again, great partners with us. They're partnering with us next on a campaign called Get Fit Where You Live. We have so many beautiful places in Mount Pleasant, so many businesses that offer health and wellness that we need to take advantage of. So that's actually our next campaign, second annual Get Fit Where You Live. We'll be promoting those health and wellness businesses. There will be some incentives for people to check in those businesses as well with some giveaways, and all through the month of March. And then we're going to end it with the Cooper River Bridge Run, where the chamber's putting together a little group of people who want to cross over that bridge.
All right, Rebecca, so we got to throw it out there now. So does that mean you'll be running the 6.2 mile Cooper River Bridge Run this year?
I don't know if I'll be running per se, but I'll definitely be there with my shirt on and cheering on my fellow group bridge members.
There we go. It's all part of the spirit. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
This is where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. Thanks for joining us on the Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm Brian Cleary. Each time we do a podcast, we try to highlight what's great in Mount Pleasant. And one of the great things, the restaurants, and also the fact that the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce is working to help those restaurants, help the businesses here. Rebecca Imholz with the Chamber, the director of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, joins us today to talk about their Dine Where You Live campaign. So Rebecca, can you tell us some of the places, because not all the Dine Where You Live campaign are necessarily sit-down restaurants. You've got a pretty wide variety of food places in the town that are participating.
Well, of course, I want to focus on my members first, and we have Burton's Grill and Bar in Town Center. You can eat outside there. You can take it to go. We also have a member who has a home-based business called For All the Tea in China. So he's one of our participants. And we have folks such as the Nutrition Place, which is at the Shops at Brickyard. Caitlin, she's got amazing smoothie drinks, and definitely, I can see her being part of our health and wellness experience too. So those are just a few. Nothing Bundt Cakes, who doesn't love our Nothing Bundt Cakes?
Amen
they're
to that,
participants.
yes.
So for those of you who don't know what to do about Valentine's yet, that's one of the reasons we run this in February. Go visit our restaurants, go pick up a cake from Nothing Bundt Cakes. We have Ruby's New York Style Bagels. They're new members of the chamber, and they're also new to Mount Pleasant. They just had their ribbon cutting for their bagel shop. And Savvy Cucina and Wine Bar is another one, as well as the Wine Cellar Wine and Gifts. So there is a wide variety of places to go, whether you're looking for breakfast, lunch, dinner, an after dinner dessert treat, lots of opportunities. Again, all that is on our social media outlets.
And Rebecca, the Dine Where You Live campaign is on now. How long will the campaign last?
It is going to go through the end of February. So that gives folks plenty of time. It's a 6-week campaign. We wanted to hit it shortly after the new year, when people aren't necessarily dining out as much. So that's why we started at the middle of January, and then it'll go through the end of February. Then we'll be right back March the 1st, starting with Get Fit Where You Live.
And Rebecca, you mentioned the fact that the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce isn't that old, just 6 years now going on. So someone who's listening, watching us today, maybe they've got a business in Mount Pleasant. What's the benefit to them? Why should they become a member of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce?
Well, I would hope after our conversation today, people would see that already, that they get the fact that the chamber is there to support the community. It's just not this campaign. We do things throughout the year to support the Mount Pleasant community. We have our big expo coming up in September. It's the last Thursday in September, it'll be the 13th year. And we expect, again, over 90 vendors. We have several hundred people that attend. It's free to participate, not as a vendor, but to attend the expo. And then our vendor rates are very reasonable, particularly if you take advantage of an early bird. But our expo is our biggest event of the year that really gives an opportunity for all businesses east of the Cooper to showcase what they offer. We build a lot of fun into it. We have a lot of social time built in for the vendors, as well as the participants on the day of the expo. So the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, even though we're only 6 years old, before that we were a business association, and before that the East Cooper Merchants Association to get people to come over the bridge and shop at Christmas. And now look at us. We have lots of places to shop over here in Mount Pleasant. But a chamber is really so important because we're, as you mentioned, we have a great relationship with the town, but we're out there listening. We've got our feet on the street, so to say, where we're listening to our business members. What do they need? How can we help support them to grow their businesses to meet our mission of encouraging business and community success east of the Cooper? We actually just did a survey to all of our members to find out what programs they want to hear about in 2023. So we've got several standing networking events every month, depending upon what works best for you. So many of our members are small business owners that they can maybe only come to one event a month. And maybe that's a coffee before 9, or maybe that's an after hours event, or a monthly luncheon. We're really excited. In February, we're going to have Dr. Tanya Matthews, who's the president, CEO of the International African American Museum, will be our speaker in February. So we've got a great lineup of speakers remaining throughout 2023, and encourage anyone interested to check us out. Go to mountpleasantchamber.org. We would love to see you at an event. Please come up, introduce yourself. Would love to introduce you to some of our ambassadors that we have that are all volunteers, but they believe in enough of what the chamber does that they are ambassadors for the chamber, and they will reach out directly to you and help you get engaged in what is, in my humble opinion, one of the best chambers in the Southeast. I have visited some other chambers now, so I feel like I can say that. One of the best chambers in the Southeast, and we're certainly constantly looking on ways to engage our community.
And if you could touch on this for a second, because I live in Mount Pleasant, I don't own a business. Some people may say, well, the Chamber of Commerce, that only helps out businesses. But by helping businesses, isn't it true that the chamber then helps everyone?
That's exactly right. And thank you for saying that. We are very supportive of our community. We have a very strong philanthropic heart. We every year we do a memorial scholarship in honor of Joe Brenson, a business owner in Mount Pleasant, for a senior that plans to have some sort of a career in the business arena. We also have been working with Department of Social Services this last year to provide backpacks of items, whether they be toiletry items or school supplies for children that are displaced from their homes, to give them dignity. So we have great partnerships with Costco in the area. Our volunteers were great in terms of getting money raised and putting these backpacks together. We take those over to DSS every so often. We have a foundation. The Chamber has a foundation that we want to continue to even expand more of our philanthropic activities. So be looking for some really cool events coming up this year, 2023, to support the Mount Pleasant Chamber Foundation, which is separate from the Chamber of Commerce, but is part of how we can support our community with needs.
And one more time for people who may have missed it the first time around, the website address, you can go there and get all that information. Where can I go to visit the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce online?
It's mountpleasantchamber.org. Again, mountpleasantchamber.org. Mount is spelled out. Reach out to us, the email info and let us know if you want to attend an event. We would love to have you. We actually have one this week called Young Professionals Group. That's a new group that has formed for the folks between the ages of 21 and 40. So we recognize that we wanted to bring in some younger folks into the chamber as well. So that group is off and running. And we have fun after hours every month, or monthly luncheon with a guest speaker, and then the coffees, the before 9s. It's all on our calendar. As long as you go to the website, click on calendar of events, you'll see all of that. And pay attention, we're out there doing some ribbon cuttings too. We work closely with the town on all the ribbon cuttings. We love to celebrate it when new businesses come into the area.
And a way of supporting the chamber and supporting the town restaurants before the end of the month, get out and dine where you live, right?
Absolutely.
And get that on social media as well. You could be a winner thanks to Rebecca and the members of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce. Rebecca, just real quick, the last restaurant you ate in Mount Pleasant at was... Put you on the spot here.
Savvy Cucina and Wine Bar.
And you indulged in a little wine, maybe?
I had a little wine.
It's kind of the law when you go there. Make a visit in the Mount Pleasant Town Center. That's just one of the many great restaurants that you find in Mount Pleasant and that you find as well on the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine. Rebecca Imholz is our guest. She's with the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce through February 28th. It's the Dine Where You Live campaign. Be a part of that. And thank you for being a part today of the Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm Brian Cleary. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast. Your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.